All right, we're live with the Zeal Show, episode 43, where all shows are unedited, unfiltered, uncensored, and unscripted. The only line that is scripted that is the line that I'm saying. So today, I'm very happy, as some of you have seen on the socials, that I have lined up a lot of guests. A lot of these are OGs in the crypto space or have made significant contributions into the space. And yeah, once a week, I would try to get them on and learn from them where they have been, what they have been doing, what they're going to do, and so on. And yeah, but before I go to that, let me just show you some of my messages that I need to let you guys know, as usual for the show. Okay, so I have the Linktree page, which I have all the different live streams that's coming up. So today we have Dave Shin, who's waiting behind the curtain right now. Join the Zeal Show community on X. Okay, this is important so that I can get the feedback from you guys. Last week we had Luis, another OG based in the Philippines. And for the show to continue, please do buy me a coffee if you can. It will help us with the financial resources. It actually helps a lot. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. There's also my weekly newsletter, which is right now on LinkedIn. I am having feedback from some of my ex people that they actually want to read and they don't use LinkedIn. So I might push that towards X articles. Uh, I'm quite I'm not there with the Substack in terms of actually getting how to distribute through Substack properly, but I'm thinking through that. But in the meantime, we can use X articles. And then the books that I've written, and one book that's relevant today is definitely my book, Understanding Bitcoin and Why Everyone Should Own It. It's not a what is Bitcoin sort of book. It's actually telling everyone we're at the end game now, where Bitcoin is getting much more centralized than it was 10 years ago, when I got in. Um, it's very important that everyone owns like 10, 20, or even $100 worth of Bitcoin to, at least from the price angle, keep it more decentralized. And then the whole hash rate and mining is a whole other issue, but at least we can solve things one at a time. Okay, so that's it. So let me go straight with my guest. I am very happy to have Dave Shin here. As many of you know, that I have known him more than 10 years ago, when I was also based in Hong Kong. And he is very, very well respected when, at least with the time I was there. Now, obviously now as well. I'm not trying to say that there is an overlap. What I'm saying is he was from Credit Suisse, from the TradFi world, whereas we all back then were just entrepreneurs, not from TradFi. And whenever he says something, we do listen, right? So now 10 to 11, 12 years later, I'm bringing him back onto the show and see where he is at. So hi, Dave. How are you?
Hey, good morning. Good, Anson. Good to be here.
Good to be. Yeah, thanks for this. Thanks for being on the show. It's been a while. We've been moving around. I was actually quite uh, astonished in a way that you moved to Singapore, but we'll get to that later. But I really want to start off. You were back then in a TradFi, right? TradFi, and obviously, I mean the TradFi guys that I know here only just got to know about Bitcoin now,
Yeah,
and they're so focused on their jobs that they don't really like want to look elsewhere. But
that's right.
what got you looking? What got you looking back then?
Yeah, minor correction. I was at Barclays, not
Oh,
Credit Suisse.
sorry,
It's
sorry.
okay, close enough. They're all the same. Yeah, I mean, when I first met you, I was deep in banking. I was a senior director heading um, a sales team at Barclays, and at the end of the day, I just realized, having been in banking up until that point, I was there for about 15 years, I think, in banking. Prior to that, I was at Lehman Brothers, Morgan Stanley, Standard Chartered Bank, and then Barclays. But I realized, especially after the global financial crisis of 2008, that something had to change, that there was way too much concentration risk with the banks. Um, and the global financial crisis was a bit of a domino effect, in terms of, I think, at the time, I thought this is going to change everything, but how's it going to change? And then, as you know, I mean, because you've been around long enough, shortly thereafter, Bitcoin popped up. So I didn't get to really find out about Bitcoin until 2012, I think, is when I read the white paper. And then I started really getting involved in 2013, as you know. But yeah, I mean, to me, it felt like the genesis of global markets changing forever, and that Bitcoin was going to be a big part in disrupting all that. And I just wanted to be a part of it at the time.
So was it the what was it? Was it the sort of store of value that you see as a potential, or the transfer that can be done, or just the overall tech that really got you interested?
For me, it was always the payment stuff because I always wondered, like, anytime we did a trade with a customer, the customer would call like the next day and, oh, the trade hasn't settled yet. Like, where is that? Are you having settlement problems? So I would have to call the ops team, the back office team, and find out, like, hey guys, we put this trade on yesterday in the afternoon. Like, how come it hasn't settled yet? And you start realizing at that stage, like, it's not the bank. It wasn't Barclays. It was this big thing in the middle, right, between us and the customer's custodian. And the big thing eventually I realized was this network called Swift. And I couldn't figure out why it took so long. I was just like, I worked on the product side with a lot of the product engineers in the front office around trading execution systems, order management systems. And as you probably are aware, because you were a part of that world, there's a standardized protocol called FIX. And so everything is done very quickly and efficiently because it's all standardized messaging on the front office side of things. But the back office, I always thought, well, isn't that all standardized through Swift as well? And it is, but I still then couldn't figure out, then why can't we settle instantly with customers? So that was really the question mark and the curiosity angle of it. And then I started really digging into it once I figured out, well, what if we had, like, an open ledger, and you really couldn't kind of do these T plus transactions, like, because everything is visible. I thought that could be really game changing.
So okay, so from that question you asked yourself, what came to you? Was it for me? It was actually playing a game, and someone within World of Warcraft told me about it. Literally told me. How about for you? How did you get to know about Bitcoin? Do you
I
remember?
was having, as you know, I was based in Hong Kong at the time. I was having, and people here back then would have a beer after market close, on Wednesdays, Thursdays, etc. So I think it was on a Thursday. I was having a beer with a friend of mine who was a quant at Goldman Sachs. He and I went to university together at Waterloo. And so we used to get there, like, we used to meet once a month and just chat about stuff in the markets and complain about work and whatnot. And this dude was like, hey, man, I was reading this thing online called the Bitcoin white paper. Like, what is that? And he's like, you're the one guy, I think you're going to love it. Like, go home, Google it, and read it. So I did, and I couldn't fall asleep. I just, I read it and I was like, holy mother of God, this thing is going to change everything.
Wow.
Because I had already been thinking about, why is it taking my customers' trades to settle so long? And then I'm reading this thing going, could there be, like, instant finality on transactions with this?
Did,
And so that's how I got introduced.
did you talk to your colleagues about this? And if you did, what sort of reaction did they have?
Oh man, they used to call me the Bitcoin banker. So if any of your viewers care, they can Google my name, David Shin, and Bitcoin. They'll see I was in the financial media quite a bit.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Bloomberg, CNBC's, like, all that stuff, right? New York Times. Um, and I took it as an opportunity, even though Anson, I knew I was at risk of getting fired and laid off
I
because,
was worried for you actually. Yeah.
yeah, as you're aware, the banks are heavily regulated, and me being a front office sales guy, uh, they didn't like that. But I was willing to take that risk because I thought someone had to do it. And at the
Wow.
time, there really wasn't a senior banker. I think I must have been one of the first, actually, to be very public about it.
Yeah.
And I think in the long run, I actually believe, when I look back on my crypto career, I actually believe that's why people had a lot of respect for me, was that they knew I was taking a lot of risk. and that, wow, this guy must really believe in this stuff, right? And I did, obviously. So yeah, I mean, I was out there quite a bit talking about it, and my banker friends and even some of my clients, they thought I was crazy. However, there were a small percentage of people that they really listened, and they ended up buying some Bitcoin. And till this day, I have people, because I talked about it so much. I have people reach out to me on social media, and they're like, Dave, because of you, I was able to pay for my wedding. Dave, because of
Wow.
you, I paid for my kids' university. I kid you not. And it feels great. Like, it was never about money for me, and it never is. But the fact that people, they listened, right? And they obviously had their own curiosity. It was remarkable.
Wow. So are those are some of your friends that were at Barclays? Are they still championing inside, or are they out already? Most of them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're probably seeing it as much as I am, right? A lot of the bankers are trying to get into crypto because they think this is where all the money is. So a lot of guys have left. If not, they're bouncing from job to job because banking isn't what it used to be. The paycheck isn't there as much, and specifically the bonuses, right? So there's a lot more curiosity, but there's also a handful of people who've left to get into crypto. Actually, more than a handful. And a lot of them reach out to me, right? Because I guess they think that I can help in getting them jobs or giving them some kind of angle. Um, and I try and help those guys who actually listened, and the guys who are actual assholes, I ghost them, quite frankly, because look,
There's a lot of them.
yeah, there's a lot of them, and it's just like it's not meaningful for me to help people that never felt that this was something that they believed in, and now that they need some, a new job, it just that's not the right angle. So but yeah, quite a few have moved into and transitioned into crypto.
Mm, great, great. So, yeah, I want to go and talk about the Hong Kong Bitcoin Association. Still remember old, or very nostalgic when I think about this. Leonard and all of them. How's the association going, and like where's the whole group? Where's the whole group right now? Are they still around and so on?
They sure are, and it's the membership's grown a lot. I haven't been actively involved. I'm still, I still get as a founding member, I still get all the communication that goes through from time to time. I'm on the chat groups. Um, I've tried to meet Leo a few times. He's now in Vancouver. Um, so I mean, this thing has been now past 10 years, right?
Yeah, 10 years.
I think we're in our 12th year now. But yeah, so it's evolved, but the founding members are always there, and we're always kind of watching to make sure that things are moving in the right direction. But there's new blood, new people that are managing it. Um, but the membership has grown. And I think the thing I really like about it is they really try and keep it Bitcoin rather than like,
Hmm.
shit coins, meme coins. Because, as you and I talked about before, the principles behind why we're in this and why I wanted to create the Bitcoin Association of Hong Kong was to talk about Bitcoin. Bitcoin has it has so much political clout, not just financial clout or technology clout. It's got political clout. And I think when the younger generation realized this was kind of for a lot of us, like our generation, this was our political moment, right? Um, and Bitcoin was a big part of that. I think it's going to be so much meaningful. It's going to be so meaningful when it comes to people looking back into history. So it's going. It continues to grow. They still have their events, but the original guys, which really it was like me, Leo, Larry. I don't know if you remember Larry,
I already know.
Arthur.
Arthur, yeah.
Um, yeah, it was Arthur and our French friend. I'm just forgetting his name at the moment because I haven't spoken to him in a while. But yeah, there were about six of us who started that, and we're all still kind of involved, but more from behind the scenes.
Great, great, great. Yeah, so I mean, before the show, we were saying that you're with their zero, which we'll go more into that, and then we were talking about the difference in like a lot of the projects that are out right now are mostly still engineering, and then you from the banking side, even from back then till now, do you think there's still a gap in terms of understanding how to go to the market with a lot of these Bitcoin projects, crypto projects?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a really good question. I see two camps in crypto at the minute, at the moment. The first camp are the engineers who actually build stuff, and the second camp are traders and people who are trying to make money off of it.
Yeah.
Um, and neither really understand go to market, right? Like you have to have worked in a corporate environment to really understand what that means and how important it is. A lot of these guys find out when they just launch or get involved early in a project that if they don't have a particular plan around how they're going to enter a market, how they're going to approach converting users or acquiring users, um, a whole bunch of things, like also in terms of like product development, product market fit. These are all buzzwords that you hear, like at, the Facebooks and Googles, but they're buzzwords because they actually have, a real life effect in terms of launching stuff, right? And if a lot of them, they don't really understand it because they've not had that background working for corporates. So when they get to the market, they either do really well because they lucked out,
Like the,
or
yes.
because yeah, or because it was a timing thing, or the last thing is they did really well because they were able to really get a whole community behind them because the community thought they could make money off the project. It's not necessarily because there's, some sort of gap in the market that they're, filling. And I think until we can get there, we're going to see a lot of like people continue to try, but not really find a consistent overlay of killer apps that come out. Because that's a real big important piece that people are missing.
Yeah, I still think there's a lot of wastage in terms of time and resources where founders are just like, okay, let's just ship it first and see what happens. Like a lot are still like that. And yes, many of them have the luck to actually launch well. Um, but yeah, it's very hard to bridge the gap. Like you say, a lot of these founders, they start young, they don't have they're not going out to corporations to actually work. Actually, many of them can't even find a job. But you can see the stats for the younger guys trying to get in. It's very expensive. Like in the job that I had in the licensed crypto firm back then, DTC, it was very obvious that um, the the cost of a junior compliance here, I can hire somewhere else two to three of them,
Yeah,
right? So even in Hong Kong, I'm pretty sure it's quite similar. So there is a cost problem, but at the same time, yeah, they don't have enough experience to actually understand go to market properly.
exactly. And because they don't understand go to market, a lot of these guys they don't know how to derive revenue models, and therefore they rely on their tokens pumping as a part of their valuation, and that model is going to die really quickly because VCs they're just not going to play that game anymore. They're going to want to see real revenue opportunities in these businesses.
Speaking of that, that's very interesting. I remember the days when we got for my old startup, got the investment from 500 startups, and they were really just looking for literally Bitcoin founders. So I lucked out, lucky got to the States and went through the accelerator. But VCs have evolved. Today, they really want to see revenue. So to the
Yep,
point where if you don't have traction, you're not even going to get the seed. Are you seeing that as well?
100%. I mean, I myself, being in crypto as long as I have, I angel invest quite a bit. And there's two things I look for these days when, I'm cutting a check. The first thing is like, how much is the founder in this for the right reason? So, is that person, he or she, do they have not just high IQ, do they have high EQ? Are they in it for the right reason? And then number two, what does your revenue model look like and how quickly can you get there? If they can't, I mean, if they can't pass either of those tests, I'm personally not cutting a check. Um, but yeah, I'm definitely seeing it more and more. I think, there's a bit of a hangover in the VC market. Like I think these guys are tired of holding bags of tokens that are not really doing well. And clearly in this market as well, like everyone's getting derailed. But if you really have a strong revenue model, even if the token gets derailed, right? And I think Layer Zero is a really good example of this. Like we don't rely on the token. In fact, we don't talk about it. It's just it's out there, but we really focus in on how do we get real business and how do we drive revenue. And it's one of the ethos around the company that really attracted me to them because I realized, well, look, I can work with this, right? But yeah, to go back to your point, VCs, there's a real hangover with funding projects just to try and shill their tokens and get them up and then liquidate out of them.
Yeah, I mean, I also keep looking at different projects. Layer Zero was the one that also attracted my attention because they're really trying to focus on the business. But many DeFi projects, they still launching. You can see on crypto Twitter or crypto X, they're shilling and shilling and shilling. It's like it's still never ending. So for you, how do you like look at these projects? If there are the ones on are there ones on CX that you see attracted you, and then you go and talk to them, or how's the process like for you in terms of angel investing?
I'm pretty fortunate. I've been doing this for a long time, as you know, so I get a lot of inbound, and I got a really good network of other investors who send me stuff. Um, that doesn't necessarily translate into a good thing because you end up seeing a lot of shit, to be
Okay.
honest. Um, but you do see stuff, and so I've been pretty fortunate in coming across a few projects that have been pretty interesting. But yeah, I typically it's through my own network or inbound stuff that's coming through.
Okay, great, great, great. So yeah, so as we talked about that we were based in Hong Kong, I was also there for a while, and then moved to Singapore. Um, I was quite astonished that you actually came to this part of the world. Well, what was the thing that attracted you to come to Singapore?
Yeah, I was it was two things, two factors. The main factor was the regulators in Hong Kong, and you know this because you lived here. I didn't see them progressing quickly with crypto. They had no incentive to. They were making enough money, or sorry, the market was making enough money in terms of the Hong Kong stock market and real estate and everything else here in terms of financial sector that they didn't really need to put resources
Mm.
at the regulatory level around crypto. However, I felt that Singapore's MAS, like, they were a lot more progressive and they were a lot more willing to have interactions with people in the industry, which is why you guys were able to set up, your organization, right? Um, and they're happy to engage and learn more. And to me, looking ahead, I just thought having a progressive regulator in a market like Singapore could be really interesting, and I wanted to get there because I wasn't as bullish in terms of the regulatory environment in Hong Kong at the time. So that was for the first thing. The second thing is it was like a perfect storm. Um, the umbrella movement started,
Yep.
and I had two young kids, and it got really bad, as you recall. Um, it got really bad, and I was at the time I didn't know how it was going to end. Was a PLC coming in here? Like I just didn't want to be here for that, especially with two young boys. So we left. But those were the two main reasons. And a big part of it was the MAS and the regulator in Singapore.
Nice. Yeah. So MES, I would say, was quite progressive to the point that I think the either the FOMO effect or either finally there's a knowledge gap that has been filled in Hong Kong. Hong Kong seems to be becoming more progressive. Like
Yes.
they are allowing staking now. I've been pushing MES to allow staking. I asked them for the reason. The reason was they're still fearful, which means it's not educated enough. I can say this because I've been talking to them on this, and they were happy to show them some workshops, but we're still not there yet with the association. But staking, they've got it down. So I
Yeah.
I'm just like a question for you would be, do you think Hong Kong actually knows what they're doing now, or they're now just trying to compete and see what happens at the enforcement stage or the later stage?
I actually, you're right. I'm so bullish on Hong Kong, more than Singapore. It's kind of the tables have turned, and
Yes.
that's why I've come back to Hong Kong three times already this year. Um, to me, I actually think Beijing is quietly allowing Hong Kong to be more aggressive because of Trump.
Hmm.
Uh, they've been very clear. Beijing's been very clear. They do not want Trump in the U.S. to win sort of the global crypto battle, right? They don't want brain drains where companies are leaving Asia to go and set up offices in New York and all that kind of stuff, right? So I actually believe that Hong Kong finally has been given somewhat of a green light to go and really, you know, get more progressive without having to continually look behind them towards Beijing, which is what they've had to do for a long time. And as a regulator, as a market, you can't really progress if you have to continue to look back and wait to get affirmation on things to be able to do things. So now that's, in my mind, pretty much gone. And that's why they're moving very quickly. But they also, I think, believe that, and I've spent time with Duncan Chu, and I've spent time with people here in the regulator's office. I think they really believe that a lot of foreign capital, which is what drives markets like Singapore and Hong Kong and Asia in general, is leaving Hong Kong and it won't come back, unlike the past.
Hmm.
And so they need to attract more foreign capital. So
Uh,
that's a big part of it.
I see. I see. So yeah, sometimes when there's, I won't say crisis, when there's opportunity or there's something that is required, otherwise it's gone. It is gone. You have to take advantage of it, which is what Hong Kong is doing. Because there was one
Correct.
time that the Hong Kong Customs actually asked me, as the association head, and also back at TTC, to help them understand more about crypto. So I actually hosted with the licensed companies, all the different compliance officers with them. By them asking me to help them, and they flew over here, I literally changed my mind. I'm saying Hong Kong is moving forward now. It's
Correct.
what a different place after 10 years.
Yep. Correct.
Yeah.
Out of necessity.
Oh, necessity, right? Yeah. But for now, I don't know if this is real. I actually may because I haven't opened a Hong Kong exchange account yet. Is it true that the exchanges you can only put in Hong Kong dollars, trade in crypto, and then you can't send out the crypto, or is that not right?
I don't. I mean, I've not had any issues.
Not yet.
Yeah,
So you can actually send out the crypto from the Hong Kong exchanges.
maybe there's rate limiters, like if you're trying to send a lot, but smaller amounts, I haven't had issues.
Okay, okay, great. So uh, before we move on to the Africa stuff, I do want to ask. Now that you are in Hong Kong and Singapore so much now, and then we're also seeing in terms of the trends, in terms of what the regulators are thinking, but in terms of the culture on both sides, how do you
Yeah,
see it different from Singapore and Hong Kong?
great question. Um, so in the past, Hong Kong was a very sort of it was a great place for communities, right? So there was a lot of like meetups here that were legit meetups. Um, and that was sort of the basis of us setting up that foundation in the past, or the association, I should say. Um, and Singapore, I remember attending a few meetups and it just wasn't the same.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of know what I was talking about, right, in the past, right? Because you were at the meetups here as well. It was just a different vibe. And I think part of that was here in Hong Kong, you had a lot of like mix of people coming here. And truly, Bitcoin needed to be global, not just in terms of access, but also in terms of the people for it to really succeed. And so the community thrived here, and it was lacking a little bit more in Singapore. I find it's kind of turned around. Like attending meetups in Singapore is much better than attending meetups here in Hong Kong these days. Hong Kong's actually pretty dead. If like I was having dinner in Lang Kwai Fung last night and walked out at 9 p.m. after dinner, and I was like, it's Wednesday night. This place is dead.
Oh wow.
So, and if you speak to your friends in Hong Kong, they'll tell you. I mean, it's just not what it used to be, and therefore that's impacting community and all that kind of stuff.
But do you
But the
think they
other,
can rebuild it back somehow?
they're really trying, which is why they've been. I mean, there's been two conferences, big conferences here in the last 3.5 months, right? So Hong Kong Consensus and now Web3 Festival. So they're really trying to get it going. Um, But the other thing I would say is also today, if you take a mark to market, Hong Kong has become very Chinese
Yeah.
in terms of crypto, and Singapore is still very international. So let me be very specific of what I mean by that and give you some examples. You will not see Ripple set up their headquarters in Hong Kong.
Mm.
They'll set it up in Singapore. You will see Hashkey set up their office in Hong Kong, but not Singapore.
Yep.
So just through those examples, I think what you should take out of it is Hong Kong will be a lot of Chinese money. Singapore will still be a lot of international money, and therefore it will attract a lot of international companies in crypto, which then creates a different sort of environment and vibe than in Hong Kong. But both are very important for Asia. But to go back, my final point is to go back to sort of the retail level. The communities are, the vibe has gotten much better in Singapore, whereas in Hong Kong, it's gone the opposite way.
Yeah. So how I see, well, at least myself, I'm from Hong Kong. I can feel that if back then, just looking back at hindsight, if the regulators were as progressive as MAS back then, because Hong Kong people are like this. When they have an idea, they really want to push. I remember back then, everyone was trying to push, but we
Right.
didn't have the coordination of the regulators back then. But here, it still is today that they want to see what MES is thinking first before they push. And when you do that, you're always, not pushing. And
Right.
now MES is tightening a bit to the point that I think it will dampen on this side. Um, and I do hope, even if it's more culturally more Chinese, it can be more vibrant in the Hong Kong side as well. Because this side, everything is still seeing what MES is doing before they actually want to move forward.
Yeah, the biggest problem that Singapore has at the moment is back then, Hong Kong was its only real competitor when it came to crypto, talent, and crypto money. Dubai came into the picture,
Dubai, yes.
and it's just made a lot more sense for people to, go to Dubai instead of Hong Kong. So they're facing two competitors now, right? Whereas Hong Kong crypto people, they don't think about going to Dubai.
Yeah, interesting point. Yeah.
But Singapore crypto people, immediately, if they're not happy with the environment, it's Dubai, not Hong Kong.
Wow, that validates an interesting point because I remember at one call with MES at the old company, because there was at one point where Chainalysis came out with saying there were three companies that brought in $1 billion worth of payments, and then
Yeah.
and then one of them was DTC. These things are okay, can talk because it's public news. But one of the questions they actually asked was, Anson, just from your personal angle, uh, do you think there's a lot of competition from Dubai? They actually asked directly that question. I didn't think that much back then, but I did say, but back then wasn't as I didn't see MES tightening up so much compared to now. But now that you say, you're right. Like Hong Kong people, they will just usually stay there. Singapore, if they don't like it, they better be looking at how Dubai does it so that it doesn't go, the money doesn't flow over there. Because Charles, the CEO of DYDX, he's also based there as well now, right? He was, so yeah, next week we'll be talking to him. But yeah, a lot of people are in Dubai.
They sure are. But again, the Dubai, you will not see Ripple set up their headquarters in Dubai. You will not see Coinbase set up there. They'll stay in Singapore because there is a certain stigma around the money that hits Dubai
True, yes.
and the people that end up going there. So until they are able to, the regulators that is in Dubai, until they're able to clean that up a little bit, it's gonna still be just sort of an outlet for people who are playing in more the gray. Like I'm not saying Charles, and I know Charles, and I'm not saying they're doing that, but I think people go there expecting a certain amount of freedom at a higher percentage point than what they're getting, let's say, in Singapore or Japan or Hong Kong. And usually that percentage point is like they want like 90% at minimum freedom, right? To be able to build their business and do what they want. But we all know that that's pretty much completely deregulating, and that's not going to work out as well. And
True.
so larger companies, the Geminis, all these companies, they'll never set up an office there, in my opinion.
Great. Speaking of deregulation and also what we talked about before, and looking at a lot of your posts on LinkedIn, you are very big on Africa. You are seeing a huge opportunity there, not only just from you, my other I would say policy partner in crime, Loretta Joseph, who will also be on the show. She's working on a lot of model law papers on virtual asset licensing, stablecoins licensing, and it's helping the African side. A lot of Africans, I've seen photos with her thanking her for doing the model law and all that as well. So for you, from your lens, what are you seeing with Africa? Why is it so big to you?
Yeah, so it's worth providing the context. I am an investor. I'm investor, the first investor of a company that I helped set up there 8 years ago, with a very good friend of mine who's Cameroon Canadian.
Mm.
And you know, this company is called Interstellar. And we basically ended up becoming sort of like what Consensus is to institutions, where they've been advising them about Ethereum and blockchains. Interstellar has done that for the African banks. Um, you fast forward to today, Interstellar is the technology partner for the most powerful bank on the continent, which is called Afreximbank,
Mm.
Africa Export Import Bank, which is the bank, the Pan African Bank for the African Union. Um,
Wow.
so we built a private using a private chain. We've built a marketplace called PAPS, PAPSS, where it's a B2B system where you can basically transact between two counterparties for cross-border settlement by using tokenized deposits on both sides and then swapping atomically. And what this allows the African continent to do is get away from SWIFT and the US dollar.
Oh, wow. So what are so for sure in Africa they don't like the Swift system in terms of liquidity. They have much less than other parts of the world, so it's also very hard for them for sure. But what is like on the ground, like you're saying, what is the actual challenge? Like in terms of settlement time, it's definitely much longer, or are there other sort of challenges that you saw before you actually went in?
Yeah, I mean, people like to think that Africa is very corrupt and there's a lot of bad dictators, and there was. And I always remind people a lot of that was being funded by Western governments
Yes.
to create instability so that they can come in and take their resources. Um, but it's more to your point. What is the real on ground problem? The on ground problem is that even for people like you and I, so if I was in Zambia and you were in Kenya, and let's say you're a cousin of mine, and I just wanted to send you $10, right? I have to go through Swift. There is no, in Europe they have SEPA, in the US they have ACH, and Singapore, they have Fast, and Hong Kong has Octopus and all this stuff, right? Africa, 54 countries, every single cross-border transaction, regardless of whether it's $1 or $1 million, has to go through Swift,
Wow,
which
that
means that
sucks.
it sucks. So a lot of money ends up getting trapped in different countries because they can't send it out because it ends up depleting the value of that amount by the time it settles because of Swift, but also because of the T plus timeline. Now, why, when people ask me, like, well, why does it deplete? It's because you're always having to go through an FX pair just to send money. You see what I mean? So again, let's say I'm in Nigeria, you're in Kenya, and I'm trying to send you like $5, 5 naira. That 5 naira, it's a small amount, right? I have to go through the naira US dollar FX pair to then send that US dollar across to the US dollar account in Kenya where you're receiving, and then there has to be another FX between the Kenya shilling and the US dollar, by the time all of that happens, T plus three, and it lands in your account, it goes from $5 to a dollar. And the reason for that is because a lot of the central banks in Africa do not hold large amounts of US dollar reserve. So there isn't there isn't a lot of US dollars that's being floated with treasuries across the banks. And therefore it gets very expensive. So I'm sure you can work the math out, right? This
Yeah.
becomes very, very problematic, especially if you go from retail level like $5 to I'm Dangote Group and I'm trying to send, or I'm, Huawei Africa, and I'm trying to send from one of my locations to another location. It causes a lot of brain damage. And
So,
so, yeah,
um,
go ahead.
no, so I was thinking like I know Interstellar is trying to do the instant settlement. Uh, are you for the tokenized deposits? But isn't there a sort of a liquidity issue still that you need to convert, or is it a direct conversion between the two currencies?
So the liquidity in today's traditional world, okay, because there isn't that much US dollar reserve on the continent with all the banks, comes from third party vendors, brokers who provide that liquidity. But they still take massive spreads because they know that they need that US dollar liquidity. Here, what's happening is that because this FX marketplace, perhaps, is being pushed by the biggest bank, which is like the bank that all the other banks bank with, right? That's how big Afreximbank is. There's a certain amount of guarantee around settlement. But also, they bring in a lot of proper third party liquidity providers and incentivize them to make sure that people on the platform, i.e., the other banks that are doing these cross border transactions, don't get stuck, right?
Hmm.
So it's really interesting when you get into these solving these problems with a big brother who needs your help to solve these problems, and all you have to focus in on is building it. They take care of it.
Nice. So, does the bank also have multiple branches around in the different countries? That I guess that no, does it
Yeah,
help?
they're not that kind of bank. I mean, think of
Oh,
Afreximbank as like what the World Bank is to the to what is it to the yeah, like they're more like they're like a sovereign entity, right?
mm.
So they're at the African Union's bank. It's like the European Union Central
Oh,
Bank,
yep,
what
yep.
the
Oh, yeah,
European,
yeah.
right? That's like Afreximbank. It's like the bank that all the banks on the continent bank with. So all the central banks bank with Afreximbank.
Hmm. Okay. Do you think there's a Bitcoin angle for Africa right now?
Yes, but not B2B.
Not B2B, right?
Yeah, I mean, really, their focus is solving that cross-border problem. And once that gets solved, I think the next thing that they'll look at is real-world asset tokenization because they have a lot of assets, resources, but they don't have a CME, the Chicago
Hmm.
Mercantile Exchange, and they'll never build that. So if they've built a system that allows tokenized deposits between financial institutions, the next layer will be to have corporates and whatnot tokenize their assets because they'll be able to settle it pretty quickly.
Yeah, because I am actually seeing Africa actually will be able to leapfrog because from what Loretta is saying, which she'll be here in 3 weeks to talk about this, they're very willing to listen to get the regulations right. They're very they because they are seeing what's happening in the Western system. So they're not alone. They have the internet. They can see all the different the hacks and all the different heists of the money. They can actually see it, and they actually are listening. So I actually find it very interesting. I think 5 years down the road, um, especially with the licensing that's coming up, not only in the US in terms of stablecoins, is actually going to happen pan Africa very soon. I think 5 years we will see a very different Africa, and also with the project you're doing.
Yeah, no, I'm 100%. That's why, I'm fully all in with Africa. Um, I, I, I am deeply involved with top level officials there. I'm the only non-African on the team. I think Loretta will know PAPS. I'm certain she'll know
Hmm.
Afreximbank. I quietly kind of work behind the scenes, but am very involved. So I know exactly what's going on, and the opportunity there is ginormous.
Yeah, no worries. I will definitely want to get you guys acquainted. I will make that happen. Our last question for Africa is in terms of like the investments going in. I know it's small compared to Asia. Like Asia in the last 10 years was quite crazy, right? Southeast Asia, the Chinese investments. And now, as you can see, as you were saying, there's a sort of hangover on a lot of investments.
Yeah,
Hangover, but do you think they will be diverting more towards Africa soon, or you don't think we're at that point yet?
100%. I think that a lot of foreign capital is going to be hitting Africa, shores of Africa very soon. It's one of the reasons why I want to set up a fund over the
Hmm.
next 1 to 2 years. I've been looking at doing this for an African fund for for a while now. Our good friend Zan will be aware of this
She's also traveling to Africa a lot.
because of me, right?
Oh, I
Yeah.
see.
So I've had an impact with a lot of people that I've spent a lot of time with in convincing them that Africa is the future. In fact, I always tell people that in the Old Testament of the Bible, when Noah's Ark landed after the rain stopped, I strongly believe they landed on Africa.
Hmm.
God promised Noah and his family that they would be resource rich wherever they landed, that he didn't need to worry about that. And you look at, where in the world do you see animals roaming free like that? It's only really in Africa. All kinds of animals, right? So, it's a very special place in my mind, and I think that the West has done a really bad job in trying to nurture such a special place for their own reasons.
Yeah.
Um, I have kind of taken the view over the last, 8 to 10 years that this is something that I'm committed to trying to fix. And my part of fixing it is to rebuild the financial infrastructure for payments.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I can see that happening. I'm pretty sure you'll be on a lot of the African media sooner or later. Very sure, very sure. So, okay, want to dive back into because a lot of the viewers want to talk about Bitcoin as well. This particular cycle, just to
Hmm.
give context, I have been saying that every bear market in crypto grows bigger and bigger. In 2014, the ones that are affected are only the Bitcoin holders, entrepreneurs. And then in the 2018 bear market, it was not just the Bitcoin, it was the crypto guys. So it was Bitcoin and the crypto guys. So the market share of who's affected was definitely bigger.
Yeah.
2022 is the private investment market, right? The Temasek, and Sequoia, and all of them got affected. This
Yep.
time round, before BlackRock came in, I did say, even though there was no evidence yet, that if private investments getting affected, everything's getting bigger and bigger. Public investments are going to get affected the next round. And now we're seeing BlackRock going in. We're seeing Michael Saylor becoming so relentless in buying.
Yeah.
So, with the context of this, for yourself, how do you see this cycle? Any thoughts that come up?
I don't hold Bitcoin anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, Bitcoin now represents why I got into the industry, not necessarily something that I'm going to die on the sword
Hmm.
for, um, because it's really converted into an institutional money making tool,
Yes.
which is exactly why I left banking. And yeah, it's going to continue to be that way. Now it's gone from being an institutional money making tool to central banks are going to hold it as a reserve.
Yeah.
And so it's not moving in the direction that I was hoping that it would move in. And I think a lot of us in the early days, we believed in Bitcoin because it was going to be disruptive to these institutions that are now holding it and hoarding it. And we used to talk about back in the day, like Bitcoin is not good to hoard,
Yep.
right? And that's why I never really liked proof of stake because the winners of proof of stake are the ones who hoard.
True.
Proof of work if it wasn't for ASIC chips, the whole idea was that you would have equal distribution based on equal contribution of work across the network. But ASICs destroyed that model because humanity is greedy and they'll find every way to mine as much gold as they can. So when we distill it down to the basic principle of why, at least why I fell in love with Bitcoin, and you fast forward to today, it's actually reverse engineered everything. And because of that, I think that from my personal standpoint, like I am not, I still believe in the principles of Bitcoin, but I'm not actively investing and taking positions on Bitcoin. Um, I never really cared about the price because for me, it was the whole ideology behind the tech, always was. Um, and it's now in the hands of the greedy, Wall Street people once again. And it's unfortunate. And in a certain manner, it's almost sad,
Yeah.
right? Because, here we are, we fought so hard for all this stuff, and we went from decentralization to centralization 2.0. It's crazy.
So now I'm thinking back, maybe in hindsight, when we try to define what mainstream means, I think we better define it much more better rather than letting the market do it.
Yeah, the biggest lesson for me with Bitcoin is you can fix problems with technology, but technology can't fix greed.
Hmm.
Greed is something that just will never go away. And so if something is shiny enough and has enough demand, regardless of how amazing that shiny thing is, it's going to be tarnished at some point.
Wow. You're very right. Yeah, it's a very different time, and I keep telling people that it's reaching to a point that it's like gold, where the governments are going to hoard it. You're only gonna be able to trade, you're not gonna be able to own it anymore. There will be a day where the exchanges say, sorry, you can't withdraw Bitcoin, you can trade it because they don't have enough. Because it's
Correct.
being taken by the central banks, the big boys, no one's going to have enough.
Correct. I mean,
Yeah.
look, for me, I've always kind of believed in the underlying technology, like decentralization, consensus, like, and taking that into places where you can solve problems. So I'm kind of continuing the path that I've always wanted to continue along. But when I look back, as I mentioned, like it's really unfortunate because there was a group of us that took on so much risk in pushing this out to the market for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And it's kind of reverse engineered itself, right? And here we are today. Like you said, like BlackRock is one of the biggest holders of it. Um, and even central banks are getting involved.
So, is there still one silver lining in this that you think there is still hope that things can change?
The silver lining is we, the world has become a big UAT environment for developing underdeveloped markets to
Hmm.
now take what we've been putting in UAT and put it into mainnet, which is what's happening in Africa. And that's going to help millions and millions of people, right? Because you and I, we don't need more payment solutions. We don't. We have enough in Asia. We don't need more investment instruments to invest in. There's plenty of things to invest in, but these people, they have nothing. And the banks aren't just going to go in there and start setting up branches and ATMs and solve problems for them, especially the West. They're not incentivized to do that. So to have open source technology that's been UAT'd in the developed markets and then to helicopter drop that into the emerging markets, I think that is the silver lining.
Ah, interesting, interesting. Okay. Well, I'm processing everything you're saying, and obviously some of the things you said, like you're not holding Bitcoin, uh, caught me off guard, which is good because it gets me thinking. But I'm learning a lot, like from you and from Luis. A lot of things that you guys said was very aligned. The ideology of the original guys are very different from the young. Okay, the younger generation really just wants to chase the money, but sometimes we can't blame them. They're also finding it hard to get jobs, so that's why they're trying to push hard as they can. But yeah, so thanks for this, Dave. Just we're coming to the end of the show. I just want to ask you, for the younger folks, is there any one-liner that you want to let them know that you can impart to them?
Yeah, I've got two young boys myself, and I tell them all the time, um, in the Marvel universe, right? The gauntlet, there's a lot of stones, but the one stone that's always featured in all the movies, including the Avengers, is the time stone.
Hmm.
Time is the one resource that is actually more valuable than Bitcoin or anything else. And to use time, which you can never get back once you use it, in the right way, doing the right things and for the right reasons is really important, even at a young age, because as you get older, you can't get those years back. And so as I'm, turning 50 this year and I look back on my life, the first half of my life, this is a thing that resonates with me and this is what I pass on to my own children.
Uh, that is awesome. Yes. Even when I just reached 42, I am valuing my time more than anything now. It's so different compared to myself 10 years ago. Yeah.
Correct.
Great. Well, Dave, it was a very, very good talk. Very happy to have caught up with you, what you've been doing. I'm definitely very, very interested in your African project. We'll link you up with Loretta soon because she's also very top down with the regulators. I'm in calls with her to do the policies every single week, so I'll definitely mention your name. So thank you so much. So for next week, we will have Charles from CEO of DYDX in. So I will be posting more of that on the socials. But for today, thanks everyone. Have a great day. And for the US, have a great night. Thanks, Dave. See you soon.
Thanks a lot.